Welcome to the 30-Minute Hour. It's the personal development podcast for entrepreneurs who are looking to level up and become unstoppable. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. Joining me as always, you know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells.
Happy Monday. Thank God it's Monday, Eric.
Exactly. Thank God it's Monday. So, Ted, it seems like we were just online here a little while ago, right?
Just online. Yeah, sharing that, right? It's a new day. You know, everybody always, Deirdre, they're always thinking about Friday. Thank God it's Friday and the weekend is here. We said, well, why leave Monday out? Monday is a good day.
I love Mondays.
Monday. Yeah. So we just kicked that off this morning. Thank God it's Monday, kind of motivating folks to think, hey, putting a different, looking at Monday as a glass as half full versus half empty.
Yeah, and I'm convinced this is going to be a complete game changer for people, right? If you start to reframe how you think about Mondays, you start to build positive momentum, then pretty soon you're like, thank God it's Tuesday, thank God it's Wednesday. You're just building that momentum. So there's a new series that we've started. It's called TGIM, Thank God It's Monday. Every Monday morning at 10 a.m., we're giving you a quick dose of motivation and inspiration, 3 to 5 minutes, where we talk about just some positivity to really kickstart your Monday and ensure that you have a great week. And it's funny, I was talking to Ted earlier, and he mentioned that our Thank God It's Monday segment had a positive impact on how he did business today. You want to talk about that real quick, Ted?
DJ, I went right into my meeting. I was pumped up. And my folks looked at me like,
You know it's not Friday, right, Ted? You know it's not Friday.
What's going on? I was pumped up. I was like, man, these opportunities, new business deals, new employees, new partners. Like it was just. So then they got excited. They were pumped up.
Yes.
So it definitely carries on, So every Monday, that's what we're coming with.
Yeah. So if you missed us this morning, make sure you just go back to the 30-Minute Hour Facebook page. You can catch us on YouTube and LinkedIn as well. Go back and watch Thank God It's Monday to get your dose of motivation for the week. But as you can tell, this is not your everyday podcast.
No.
And I feel bad I didn't really warn our guest when we were talking backstage. We talked about everything else. I didn't remind her that this is not your everyday podcast, that we're a little different here on the 30-Minute Hour.
A little different. We're a little different, Deirdre.
I did not notice. I didn't notice.
I don't know about other shows that you've been on, but put on your seatbelt.
Wow, we're in for a ride, are we?
We are in for a ride. Yep, I know quite a few people. You watch us on video. Those of you that are watching on video, I see people coming on. Definitely go and make comments in the comments section. We can make this an interactive dialogue. You may have questions for our guest today. Feel free to ask those questions. But you can also go back and listen to this episode on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and any of those other places where you like to get your content for podcasts. And don't forget to share the show.
Share the show.
Absolutely.
Share the show. Don't keep it all to yourself. Share it.
Yeah. Go ahead and That's right. Share the show. Take a screenshot. Pass it on to your friends. Let them know to listen or watch the 30-Minute Hour podcast. And don't forget about the What Now movement. Yep, we've got the What Now movement group. We've been having our correspondent, Maisha Hoy, come in and tell you about that. We'll catch her next week doing the What Now update.
Wait. Our correspondent, Maisha Hoy, she's taking a day off already?
That's right.
She did it 1 week.
Oh, man, I tell you. Unbelievable. But the What Now movement, we've got some great things going. So definitely go in and make sure you're following our Coffee and Conversation series. We're talking about goal setting and just taking your business and your life to the next level. Let's go ahead and bring on our guest, because this is so the theme of our show today. I remember I was talking to her a while back and she mentioned this, and I'm saying, man, we have to talk about this on the show. So get this, Ted. Here's the theme of the show: how to take the crappiness out of content creation.
Oh yeah, that's a good topic.
We got to talk about that. How to take the crappiness out of content creation. So our guest today, she's the founder and CEO of Capsho software that helps entrepreneurs to take the crappiness out of content creation. She's a serial entrepreneur. She's founded and led 7 businesses across 5 industries in the last 9 years.
Ooh, Deirdre is somebody. You are somebody.
Somebody. Yeah, so we're going to have her tell her story I'm sure. So I'm sure it was all mountaintop experiences the whole time, right? I'm sure it was just nothing but winning.
That's
right. Nothing but gold medals all the time, right?
That's it.
All right, we have to talk more about that when we bring her on here, but she's got this hands-on experience and successfully growing businesses to 6 and 7 figures. She now coaches and works hands-on with entrepreneurs to turn followers into buyers while only spending 2 hours a week on social media. So please join me in welcoming to the 30-Minute Hour podcast, Deirdre Tshien.
Thank you. Yes, I'm ready for my gold medal. Another one.
It's all been sunshine and rainbow. It's all been sunshine and rainbows, right? There you go.
I was just super impressed that you got my name right, because I was like, I bet I got in his head.
Right.
The pronunciation.
Get it right.
You know, it's like maybe it's the podcaster in me, but that's one of my nightmares. I don't want to be going through a whole episode saying someone's name wrong the entire time. So I just always try to double check that. But now, definitely welcome to the show. Glad to have you. It's truly an honor.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.
For sure. Let's roll back the clock. I like to give people the backstory as far as how you got to this point. So let's start with your childhood. Like when you were growing up, like what did you want to be? What did you see yourself doing?
Wow, it's so interesting, because I actually was never one of those kids who knew what they wanted to be. I really had no interest. And I want to give you some context, because it sounds really lame when I say it like that. But you can probably tell by now that I am a massive overachiever, right? You can probably tell that, yeah. And I kind of grew up, I was tutored from 3rd grade. I played the piano when I was, 4 or 5. I was, one of those Asian kids, first migrant family, and my parents had moved from Malaysia to Australia because they wanted to give my brother and I a better life, more opportunities, things like that. And I think, they definitely had plans for me. My dad especially wanted me to become a doctor, of course. But growing up, I was never really, I kind of did what they wanted me to do in terms of, get the marks and do the tests and all of that. But I never really actually, there was never this burning passion inside of me at all, until probably even really recently, if I'm going to be super honest about it. Yeah. So, and that probably tells you a little bit about why I've kind of been, I have started that many businesses, because I'm still trying to figure out my place in this world, just like I think a lot of us are. So that's the thing. I don't think I've ever known what that was. So that's just been my life. I've just been trying to figure it out.
Interesting. So if you could go back to those younger days, knowing what you now know, what advice would you give to yourself?
I think definitely, and I give myself this advice even today, so not even just my younger self, but definitely not to be too hard on myself. I think that's the thing. I grew up with so much pressure of having to do the right things and say the right things and, you know, be on the straight and narrow and be the good girl and do all this. And I think, you know, that I just would have liked to have known that they were things that felt so important at that time. It's actually kind of not, you know, it's not the end of the world if I didn't get, you know, a grade in something. Like, it's not the end of the world if I failed a piano exam like that, you know. Yeah, I think I definitely would have tried to give myself a bit more of a break when I was younger.
Let me tell you, Deirdre, if you didn't get an A on a class, you would have been okay. I'll let you know. You know, you would have been okay.
Thanks, Dad. I appreciate knowing that now.
Yeah,
but it's interesting though. Do you think that pressure to be the best that kind of fueled you or helped you?
Yeah, probably in part, yeah. It can't help but do that. I think, you know, I went to a top selective school in our state. It was the top selective school in our state. You know, you have to take a selective test to get in, and they only take the top 120 people who apply. And so, you know, it's kind of like a hothouse of competitive overachievers. And I think the somewhat great thing is, even in those foundational years, is for anyone who didn't crack under the pressure, you were kind of good. As in, you know, you could pretty much confidently do anything, really, because there was so much pressure and there was so much competition. There was just so much, you know. But yeah, so I definitely think that while there were definitely some negative things that probably came out of that, my experience is that it definitely forged a core in me that was like determined, competitive, like no matter what, I was going to make it. So yeah.
Interesting. So talk about the life experiences that just led you to this point of where you are now. Like, what's your story? How do you go from, you know, being this younger person to now you're the CEO and you're talking about crappy content?
Yeah, it's a pretty convoluted journey. So, you know, there I am on the path to becoming a doctor, because that's what my dad wanted me to do. And at that time, I didn't know any better. I didn't know that I wanted to do anything else. And it took literally all the way up until 12th grade, which is when we do our entrance exams for university. And when I was actually we have to put our preferences down. And at the time, it's like, it's both university and degree. What degree do you want to do? And I was like, okay, so if I don't get into medicine, what do I want to do? And generally everyone's like, you want to do medical science, or you want to do some kind of science-based thing, because that makes sense. That's the pathway into medicine at some point. But I was like, I actually hate science. Like, I was like, I could not fathom the thought of putting any other preferences, like science-based things, down. But there was this curiosity inside of me of business. And like, you know, at the time I was reading a lot of like Jeffrey Archer books and stuff. And he talks a lot about his fiction is based in business and things like that. And there was just this like allure that I didn't know what it was of business. So I made a deal with my dad that, because I wanted to go to university and do a Bachelor of Commerce, which is business. So my compromise was that I do a law degree alongside of that. So I'll do a double degree, I'll do law and commerce. And so that's what I did. So I went to university and I did a comm law degree. And when I graduated, I actually got a job in an investment bank. So largest investment bank in Australia. And I was kind of fortunate at the time, because even though I was like a junior burger, I was actually put on this really big project, kind of like one of those once in a lifetime, or once in a decade, I should say, regulatory reforms that happens in the banking industry. And it so had visibility all the way up to the CEO. So I was in these rooms with like super senior people, and I am forever thankful for that opportunity, because it was obviously so great for my career and things like that. But at the same time, what that gave me access to was almost like the view of what you kind of have to become to climb the corporate ladder. And even at that, you know, I call that my quarter life crisis moment, because I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to have to become this person, play the games, the politics, stakeholder management, whatever, like all those things to climb the corporate ladder. So that was kind of an epiphany that I had in that moment. Around that same time, my boyfriend, now husband, and we just moved out. Funnily enough, he was studying medicine and he was miserable. He was hating it. So we were both like in this, having our core life crisis. And because we just moved out, I tried to do the cooking thing and very quickly realized that that's not in my wheelhouse. I'm an overachiever and competitive. I just could not. I gave that up. But Ash, actually, he really enjoyed cooking, and specifically, he really enjoyed baking. Now, I love my desserts, so it was a match made in heaven. He would perfect my favorite desserts, and I would taste test and I would eat them. And there was this, and from there, we actually decided to start. So he was studying medicine, miserable. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Corporate isn't for me. And then we just decided to open our first business, which was a dessert bar in Sydney. So random. And so, we both did not have any kind of background in hospitality, like not even as a casual waiter or waitress, like nothing. We were like, yeah, how hard can this be? We can do this. And I don't know like how we went through each and every barrier. I think if we had known at the time what it took, we would have opted out very early on, but we kept going and we launched. And I wish that I could say we won medals. We did not. It was, we used the old tried and tested marketing strategy of build it and they will come, which does not work, by the way.
Thanks for clarifying that.
But we were young and naive. We didn't know what we were doing really. But the problem was that if anyone has had a brick and mortar store, that you're on the hook for a lease. So we had a 3-year lease agreement. You have to fit out a place, which means that you're in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt before you even open. And this is what I mean by I don't know how we kept going. I don't know how because we just said, we just made these things happen. And then we opened and we were for months struggling because we didn't know how to actually get people. Because, again, we had this idea that we had the best product out there. Surely people will just know. They'll just find out about it and they will come. But that didn't happen. Now, fast forward, we did eventually get there. We did eventually turn that tap on. We actually grew that brand to 5 locations in Sydney. And then alongside that, we started a burger restaurant and we had 2 locations of that in Sydney. And then end of 2018, we found out that our store manager of one of our busiest stores, so our city store, that he had been stealing from us. And over years, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, like a lot of money. It was ridiculous. And so it was kind of one of those moments because we'd been operating, these businesses for almost 5 years at that point. And we were on this, I think eventually we felt like we were just on this hamster wheel. Like it's funny because you go into business to move away from, the hamster wheel, and then you don't, well, for us, we didn't realize we had just created another hamster wheel for ourselves. And it kind of it took something like that, like this circuit breaker to snap us out and make us really rethink where we were headed, what we were doing. Was this even the path that we wanted to be on? And for me, I was like, this isn't, at the time I was actually exploring another idea with someone else that I had met in corporate. And we were exploring this fashion technology idea. And I was like, I've always wanted to live and work overseas. And I was like, there is going to be no better time. Because if we keep growing these brands, it's going to get harder and harder and harder to be able to do anything else. Not to say that it was not impossible, but it just gets harder, right? And so, we just made this decision to go F it, let's go. Let's just move to the other side of the world. And I was like, well, what better place?
Did she just say F it, Eric? Like she had
Yes,
an
you
F in moment?
did. It's not your everyday podcast. I
It's
told you,
not
Ted.
the podcast. Woo!
So what better place than New York City than to explore the intersection of fashion and technology, right? So we're like, cool. We're gonna move. We're gonna move to New York City. We're gonna give ourselves 12 months. So we gave ourselves 12 months because that was we had no credit. Obviously not. Having lived in the US, we had no credit. We had never rented anywhere. We actually had to prepay our rent for 12 months. So that was pretty much all the savings that we had.
Oh,
So we were
wow.
like, okay, prepay our rent, get over here. My co-founder decided to move over with us as well. So, we were like, okay, we're going to go all in on exploring this business that we had, that we were working on. And so we moved to New York City. That was August 2019. And we had 12 months to make it work. And so we hit the ground running. We went to our hypothesis for that business, that fashion technology business, was that our ideal target customers were going to be either young college women or young professionals. So we went to Columbia, NYU, Wall Street, and we just started talking to women. And as a result of that, we actually decided that while it was a problem that we were solving for, it wasn't a big enough problem. And so we failed that idea. We failed that business. And so, at the same time, we were talking to boutiques and brands because it was a marketplace. And, the one thing that they were saying over and over again was they needed help with acquisition. Obviously, every business needs help with acquisition. And we were like, I think we can help there. So that's how the agency started. Agency for e-commerce brands, and then we transitioned into coaching for e-commerce brands to really start at the grassroots level, and then through that experience, because my whole thing is about storytelling. If we're going to be on social media, if we're going to create content, you have to be telling stories, and this is particularly important for e-commerce business owners because a lot of times they hide behind their product. And so we had clients saying, I get it, Deirdre, I know that I need to tell my story, but how do I do that? And that's when the first iteration of Capsho was born. And so that first iteration was all about helping to turn stories into a whole bank of captions, social media captions and emails. And then we launched MVP, so that first iteration of Capsho, end of last year. Wow. But so much has happened since then. So let me know if you want me to keep going, or if you.
Let's stop right here. So right now, one of the things you do is you help podcasters or people in general to take the crappiness out of a content creation. So how exactly do you do that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Again, we made another really great marketing strategy mistake, which is that when we launched Capsho, the MVP, we were like, we can help all entrepreneurs. We can help everyone. And you can imagine, again, how well that goes when you're trying to get cut through with your messaging, and this is a common mistake that I think a lot of us business owners make, which is we try to talk to everyone, and by talking to everyone, we talk to no one. And so it was only actually really, really recently that we had to make the decision to niche down, which is where the podcasters come in, because we had to make a decision as to who we were going to talk to specifically. Now, for me, I love podcasting. I've got multiple podcasts. And I love talking to other podcasters because they're so, like, they love telling stories, and they know the why stories are so important, which means that we didn't even have to convince them that was something that they had to do. And so we decided to work with experts who podcast. And how we do that now with Capsho, we're actually going to launch beta in a few weeks' time, is that Capsho ingests an audio file, and it's completely AI powered. So it will create episode title, description, show notes, social media posts, and promotional emails for podcasters. So that is how we take the crappiness out of content creation. You don't have to, there's no more blank page syndrome. It's just upload a file, an audio file, and it gets created for you.
So you offer the service for podcasters. So when what are some of the most common examples of crappy content that you see out there?
Yeah, so I think a common, well, this is something that a mistake I used to make as well, and one that didn't serve us when we were looking at, definitely the data, is it's so easy to go from long form content to short form content through what everyone calls repurposing, right? Like we cut up, we slice and dice, and we, maybe if it's a podcast, then we create an audiogram and we put it out there. And we were doing that ourselves a lot. And we were just, when we looked at the data, it was just the least performing posts, just got no engagement, barely any click-throughs, things like that. And so that's the thing, is repurposing is actually not serving anyone any good. We call it reconcepting. How do you actually reconcept the content into what it is that you need to promote your episode? And so that's how content honey traps came into, that's the strategy that we lean on, content honey traps, to do that.
So talk more about that. So you say we have to go from repurposing to recontenting.
Reconcepting, yeah.
Concepting, I'm sorry, yeah. So talk about how does one do that through the honey trap?
Yeah. So, so there's a couple of things. So the first thing, the reason why I call it reconcepting and not repurposing is because each platform is different, right? Each platform, like what makes a platform work is going to be different. And when we only repurpose, we're just being we're being efficient with our time, which is great, but we're not doing it for any smart, it's just, that's really the only purpose, is to feel good about the fact that we're creating some kind of content. But it's, it's actually not really doing what it needs to do. So reconcepting is, how do you actually take your long form content, but actually have it fit for purpose for the platforms that you want to be on? And how content honey traps work is, how do you make that content so compelling that it, like, people just cannot help but want to listen to that podcast episode, for example. And that's the thing, right? Like, so many times when we repurpose, we give our best stuff away, and then people are like, well, awesome, thanks for great value, I don't need to listen to the rest of the episode, or I don't need to, But the whole purpose is that we want them to be listening to the rest of the episode, because and I learned about this through Daniel Priestley's book Oversubscribed, but he talks about the 7-hour rule. For people to become raving fans, they need to spend at least 7 hours with us. And that's why things like challenges and, work so well, is because by the end of that 5-day challenge or whatever, like, people have spent 7 hours with you. And so it's a super effective way to take someone from cold to closed. And so this is the thing, like, content honey traps is designed to actually compel people to want to listen to your podcast episode or go to whatever your long form content is, so that you can bank up that 7 hours. That is what content honey traps is designed to do.
So just so I'm clear, so like an example of repurposing would be, let's say if I've got a podcast and I transcribe it, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I put it out there and use it to promote the episode. You're saying that's an example of repurposing that doesn't work.
Yeah, and look, it could, it depends on what your purpose is for doing that. If your purpose is to try to reach people who are maybe more readers than they are listeners, then that's okay, right? Because it's totally different purpose. But if your purpose is to try to get someone to go from reading to listening, then that's not gonna work. Because you can imagine, if they're readers anyway, and they've read the value, they've read the whole thing, what is going to compel them to actually come over and listen, or like consume that same information, that same content through a different medium? So it just depends on what the purpose is that you're trying, like what outcome do you want from using that content?
Okay. And what should people do to make sure that, 'cause I agree with you when you talk about storytelling, that's just critical. So what are some key things that people need to think about if they want to be able to create a story to get their message out there?
Yeah, so I think a big one is obviously being as vulnerable and authentic as possible. Sometimes it's easy for us to tell a story almost very objectively, but what creates the connection with people is actually the emotion, right? That's actually how we connect with each other, and actually bringing that to life. So that's one of the things that we actually focus on when either talking to someone, telling stories. In my my own podcast, I always start that episode off before we hit record. I'm always like, we're going to delve into your journey, and I'm probably going to stop you at certain places because I want to delve into certain things. And my ask of you is to be as raw and vulnerable as possible, because that is what creates the connection with the audience. And so I think that is one of the biggest pieces of being able to tell a story really effectively, is to actually go there, is to delve deeply, be open, be raw, be authentic.
I agree. And like I took a podcasting masterclass, and the instructor was talking about vulnerability, and she said that like you have to lead with whatever that thing is you feel disqualifies you.
Yes,
You know that
100%. Yeah,
yeah
I love
yeah
that.
that was a big takeaway of mine. I just think that's critical. So I want to talk more about this idea of turning the followers into buyers. What else can people do to make those conversions?
Yeah, so if we talk about it from like the front end funnel of, let's say, social media, and it doesn't matter what platform, whatever platform your audience is on, to podcast, and then ultimately into a conversion event, or at least onto your list, because the whole thing is, all I'm aiming for is how can I get people to spend 7 hours with me? That's it, right? Because once they spend 7 hours with me, then that sales conversation or that ask to buy becomes so much easier. So that's why content honey traps is so effective, because the way that I use it is, how do I find people on social media? Because you've got to be on those at least one of those platforms to be able to access the number of people who are on there, because they're on there. You just have to go find them. How do you compel someone to spend time with you long form? So for me, that's a podcast. It could be a blog, it could be a YouTube video. And then from there, compel them to join your email list or sign up to your conversion event. So I'm constantly optimizing at each point and looking at the data to be like, okay, is this doing the job that it's intended to? And that's I'm just super disciplined about that, and looking at every step of that funnel and making sure that that's working. And if it's not, then at least you know where to focus.
Yeah, they say math doesn't lie, right? The numbers don't lie.
Exactly.
And so another key piece to this idea is making sure the content fits like the social media platform. So if Facebook is more loose and social, and then LinkedIn, LinkedIn is more professional and structured. Twitter is more just get to the point. Yes. So those are things you focus on as well.
Yeah, definitely. So my primary platform is Instagram. That's just, I think, the platform that I am most comfortable with. And the good thing is it's a big one, which means that there are a lot of people on there. So that's, so for me, I'm constantly trying to optimize to go, okay, well, right now, if Reels is the thing that's getting visibility, how do I reconcept my podcast content to be purpose fit for that medium? Things like audiograms and, just stock standards, graphic posts and stuff, they don't work. They're not effective. So we need to be able to change that up, because otherwise, again, we're doing that thing, right? We're creating content for the sake of creating content. And so that's what we focus on doing in the team.
So that's interesting. You say that audiograms don't work on Instagram. So what do you, for number one, why do you say that? And then number two, what do you find that does work? Hey, by the way, I'm asking this for a friend, right? Let's get that out there right now,
Yeah, I know. I wish that audiograms worked, because it would make life so much simpler. But we've tried it every which way of doing audiograms, and it just has not been effective. Like look at the data. It is it's always the content that does abysmally every time we post an audiogram. And Yeah, because, it makes it simple for us to create, but people don't really want to listen to an audiogram. They want to be engaged. They want to be able to see facial expressions. They want to be able to engage with the actual person rather than watching a wave, an audio wave line going across the page. So what we do is we are very heavily into Reels. Reels is obviously right now the thing that gets visibility on Instagram. And we just reconcept so we always start with what I call content hacking, which is we go out and we find really great examples of things that are working, that's getting high engagement and high views. And then we use that as inspiration to then lay our concept on. So if I spoke about a particular topic on my podcast, then it's like, okay, cool, there's this inspiration of a reel that did really well. How can we use the content to fit that or vice versa? And that's how reconcepting comes about, because you're actually thinking about it differently rather than just, let me just cut a 10-second clip and put that up on Instagram. And that to me is repurposing, which is not as effective.
As in, so you find the clips, if you take specific clips that are reels and replay that gets better engagement.
Sometimes I will actually I'll actually shoot another short reel about the content or the episode, but it's not actually from the episode. It really just depends. So we play around with a lot of different things, and that's the thing too, is you have to be a little bit different, because again, people have short attention spans and they get very, and the more that, again, it's easier for our brains to be like, okay, let's have a consistent, every Monday we'll post this, and every Tuesday we'll post this, and every Wednesday. But unfortunately, people also get bored of that. And they want to see new things, and they want to be entertained. That's what they're there for. And so that's what I mean by, how do we use those platforms for what it's kind of intended to, and what the people actually are there for. Yeah.
Okay. No, this is great information. I just think these little tweaks like that can really, over time, help people improve their engagement.
100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't have to do anything big and overhaul anything, but it is, to your point, just little things here and there. How can you just improve it? That 1%.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about your book, Honey Trap Marketing. It's coming out. So what will people gain? What are some of the things people are going to get from reading this?
Yeah, so it's basically kind of my download of everything that I've learned in a way over my almost decade in entrepreneurship. But I've distilled it into a bit of a formula, the Honey Trap formula, which comes down to messaging, content, traffic, and what I call a lead attracting conversion event. So that's kind of the formula. And then basically in that book, I just break it down. How do you come up with messaging that cuts through? How do you come up with content that compels your audience? How do you go and get your traffic? And that's via I have a traffic pyramid. And then the conversion side. So I love traffic. I could talk about traffic all day. What I'm not as good at, or not as well versed at, is all of the conversion events. I've done a lot of them, but I couldn't say that I'm an expert. So I've actually got guest experts that helped write some of that chapter for me. So someone from ClickFunnels, someone who is an expert in challenges, someone who does viral contests. So lots of really, really cool stuff jam-packed in the book.
All right, cool. And when is that coming out?
That's coming out pre-sales will happen June 1st, and then official launch July 1st.
Okay, awesome. Good. July 1st, people need to get that book, get their content to the next level there. And then you're also... So you're running the business, you're writing the book, you got this podcast, the Grow My Podcast Show. I think I know the answer based on the title, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Just for the people at home, I'm going to ask. So,
What is it?
what will people get out of the Grow My Podcast show?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Grow your podcast. Yeah, it is. It's specifically for experts who podcast. So I do talk about topics even from like what content. How do you talk to your high ticket buyers? For example, like how do you actually come up with content? So it's everything from content honey traps and what that means and how you use it to traffic and finding the people and getting them onto your podcast, but also when they're on the podcast, how do you actually have them stay and consume? Because the whole thing, again, as I said, let's get them spending 7 hours with us. So we need them to stay. And that's a easily forgotten thing to be like, yeah, we recorded a podcast. That's all we had to do, right? It's like, oh, well, actually, it has to kind of be good. Otherwise, you just wasted your time. So, so it's everything from how do you get listeners, grow your audience, and have them stay and become a lead for you.
Excellent. Yeah, the Grow My Podcast show. That's that's a show I will be tuning into.
Absolutely.
No, that's good stuff. So like you mentioned the book Oversubscribed, which is a book that I've read before. He's got another book that's not coming to mind right now, but it's really good too. What are some other books that have helped you to kind of get to the point where you are now?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Russell Brunson. So I've read all of his books, a lot on storytelling. So Don Miller, Kindra Hall, I've read their storytelling books. I've read I feel like I'm just trying to think of any that comes to mind. Obviously Tony Robbins as well. I've read like a ton of his books. Yeah, that's some that come to mind right now.
Okay, Tony Robbins. Yeah, absolutely. Key Person of Influence. That's the book I was trying to think of. That same author.
Yeah.
Like that and Oversubscribed, 2 great books on.
Yes.
I mean, it just makes so much sense.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Fantastic. So, I mean, what else? I mean, you're just doing a lot of things. What's next on the horizon for you?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we're building Capsho, the new iteration, the one that's going to help podcasters create all of their promotional content just from uploading an audio file. So we are going to be launching our beta program for that June 1st as well. Everything seems to be happening around there. And basically for this beta program, we're inviting experts who podcast into the program so they can use it, try it for free for 4 weeks and give us feedback during all of that. But yeah, that's what we're really racing towards. That's our whole focus right now, is to get the beta program up and going. So excited about that.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I know it's going to be a tremendous success. June 1st is a big day in your life, that's for sure.
Yes, sure is.
All right. So we're now at the portion of the show is called Write This Down, right? And this is the part of the program we want people to write down the specific takeaways they got. So we're each going to go around and give at least one idea from this episode that people need to write down so they can level up. So Deirdre, you are the guest of honor. What do you have for Write This Down?
Oh, okay. All right. I think the one thing is I know a lot of us start podcasts because we want to create connections and network and build our credibility, which is cool. I did the same thing. But I think very quickly we need to start to turn our minds to how do we actually use it as a lead gen machine. So I think that's what I would encourage everyone who has a podcast listening to this to do is how do you actually be intentional, because it's your time that you're giving up, right? So you want to, I don't know about you, but for me, I need an ROI on my time. So I think this is the thing, highly encourage you guys to think about how do you turn your podcast into actual leads for your business.
Cool. Using your podcast as a lead generation machine. All right, Ted, write this down.
I think one of the biggest things I got out of this discussion was it's okay to not have it all figured out. Right? It seems like you tried a couple of different things, and there were some just differences in those things, from baked goods business to, what was it, like would you say, like a burger place, to
To
and then
technology, yeah.
fashion and technology.
Yeah.
So it's okay to not have it figured out and try some different things, and then when you see that it's not working, try something else. And not be afraid to do it until you find that thing that's your thing. And I think that's what I heard in that. And write that down. You don't have to have it all figured out at first. Eventually, you got to figure it out.
Right.
Eventually, yeah.
I mean, I don't want you to just, for 50 years, you're like eventually you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Yeah, you don't have to have it all figured out. You just need to move. Sometimes you have to move with imperfect information. That's one of the things they talk about in the military. You're not going to have all the information. You have to move with imperfect information. Eventually, the answer will come. Write that down. So for me, everything you talked about with the story, I think is just so critical, right? Because like with what we do, like the three of us, it's easy for someone to sit in the audience and say, "Oh yeah, sure." Easy for Deirdre. I mean, she's a natural. She's just a born business person. Easy to say. But I think when you can tell your story, it connects you with people. Because then they find out that, oh, Deirdre has some of the same struggles that I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
And I had a mentor who would tell me that you shouldn't be the hero of your own story. Like if you tell a story, it shouldn't always be you winning the award or finishing on the top of the mountain. It's good to share the vulnerabilities, share your failures, share the shortcomings, so people know that, okay, yeah, I can connect with him or her because they've been through the struggle, and then now they've come out on the other side. So write this down. Yeah, just tell your story.
Exactly.
I think that's what really connects you to people. All right. Well, this has been another fantastic episode of the 30-Minute Hour. And we're thankful to Deirdre Tshien for sharing everything that she shared with us. So what's the best way that people can connect with you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is deirdretshien.com or capsho.com, capsho.com. And the beta program is open right now for signups. So you can find that at beta.capsho.com.
All right. Fantastic. We'll put all that in the show notes. I know people are going to want to get that Honey Trap book because we want to avoid having crappy content. So we want to convert these followers to buyers.
That's
so
right.
We'll definitely check that out. And we need to follow the Grow My Podcast show. So when you're not listening to the 30-Minute Hour, you need to be listening to Grow My Podcast show.
Grow My Podcast.
All right. Well, yeah, again, this has been an amazing episode. And like we said at the top, don't forget to share the show.
Share the show.
That's right.
Share the show.
Share the show.
That's
right.
right.
And don't forget, you can listen to this on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all of those places. But definitely make sure you share this information. And that's been our show for this week. And until next time, have a great one.